Thank you very much. We now have, prior to lunch, our panel, which I'll be hosting. The panel is on fostering a strong and collaborative security culture in a challenging security environment. We have three panelists joining us today. Shane Brady, Associate Director, Strategic Security Unit for Premier's Department, New South Wales. Hannah Mason, Director, Production, Events and Security at the Sydney Opera House. And Scott O'Driscoll, National Security Manager for the ABC. I would now like to welcome those three panelists to the stage. Thank you. Testing. Can everyone hear? Perfect, thank you. So you all come from very different places across a variety of industries and assets, and I think you've all, at least in the last year or two, experienced very unique and different security challenges. ABC, Sydney Opera House and Department of Premier's Department rather, no doubt, in the news we've all seen multitude of different risks that have been changes in the threat environment, different issues impacting all three of those entities, and increasingly, as we heard this morning, global conflicts impacting with local security issues. I would argue that more than ever, a threat-agnostic security culture is as important now as it's ever been. So the first question is around strong security culture and what that looks like in 2025, and how has that evolved in response to recent threats? Hannah, we might take it over to you first.
Sure. Thank you. I think for any organisation, and especially the Sydney Opera House, strong security culture is where everyone understands that it's their responsibility. It's not just the people in the uniforms or the people doing the screening. That everybody has to be vigilant, everybody has to be aware of the threats that could exist or can exist and do exist in the world and in our own environments. And one of the things that we have done over the last probably 5 years, obviously you all know the terrorism threat has gone from probable to possible to probable. We didn't really change our posture during that time. We kept our posture at the same level, but what we have done in that time is we've invested very heavily in surveillance and in CCTV, and also not just in the cameras and the equipment, but also the training that is needed to actually manage surveillance, because previously our security surveillance was done by our operational security officers, who were obviously trained security professionals, but they weren't surveillance professionals. So we made a change a number of years ago to invest in that team, that control room team, to make sure that they actually had the skills necessary to oversee a precinct that is very large, has millions of visitors every year, and also making sure that we have an environment that is safe, but it's not oppressive, because if we actually wanted to make the Opera House as safe as we possibly could, we'd shut the site. You wouldn't allow anyone on there and you wouldn't allow anyone inside. But obviously that's not what we're going to do. So we have to have that balance of having a great presence. We have a great relationship with the New South Wales Police, and they're on site every day and they back up our security team, but also allowing our staff to have the knowledge to be able to respond in situations where there might be a threat or where there might be something that's not quite right. So for us, the strong security culture is definitely having everybody understanding the responsibility is for all, not just for the security team.
Thank you, Hannah. We might turn over to Shane next.
Thanks, Hannah. Thanks, Mac. We faced with the same problems as the Opera House. We decided some time ago to concentrate on a converged model to help coordinate, make us a little more agile in regard to how we dealt with threats and risks as they emerge. When I say converged model, I'm talking about sort of breaking down the silos between information security, physical security, governance, and then HR or people. So we want to break down those silos and look at a converged model that could help us react to things as they emerge. And I've got a pretty good example, I believe, for that. We have, and we're still working on it now. It's not a dumb thing at this point. We have an issue with connected vehicles, which, as you're probably all aware, modern connected vehicles have a lot of functionality, and they're pretty good considering what cars used to be like. There's no chokes or anything anymore, apparently. But what we found, though, is high office holders are getting in these vehicles, and there's implied consent as soon as you put your backside in the car, and it pairs with your phone. It can then take your search engine, your search parameters you put into your phone. It can take your contacts, it can take your destinations, and it can actually just harvest information directly from your device or your devices. So what we had to do was look at how we could mitigate this, or at least eliminate it, at best mitigate it. To do that, though, of course, I had to work with cyber people, which is never, I don't speak binary, so that's pretty difficult on a good day. And I had to work with HR because obviously we need to look at policies, and we had to look at other mitigations such as data blockers, which people still want functionality in the cars. We've got you need to deal with our drivers. Obviously, the vehicles that we choose, certain vehicles have a higher propensity to harvest and transmit information. And what's happening is manufacturers take that information and then they on-sell it as a commercial revenue stream. So what we wanted to do is mitigate that pretty quickly, but try and put, well, first of all, we had to identify the issues, analyse it, and then treat or eliminate where we could. And that's where a converged entity became invaluable to us, because I could then work with my colleagues. And of course, those who are subject to the Commonwealth's Protective Security Policy Framework will understand that a converged entity does align well with the PSPF. But yeah, look, as I suggested, we're a big advocate for converged security framework.
Thank you. Lastly, Scott.
Thank you. At the ABC, we've also invested heavily in security infrastructure. So we've done an upgrade over the last 5 years of all of our sites. It's 57 around the country, and we're still working on the 10 international bureau offices that we have, but they'll be uplifted as well. So then we need to look at, okay, where's our weak points? And that's people. So that's where we comes into the security culture of the organisation and promoting and uplifting that along with our systems. Our systems are great now. We see everything. We get the alarms. We can monitor everything. But the weak point, again, is the people. So how do we promote a strong security culture? That all comes from doing security trainers, doing security awareness training, doing security awareness workshops, going out to people, and ideally doing those face-to-face is much better than desktop or online, because that gives them the opportunity to actually ask you questions, and you get more engagement with people when you do it that way. It's more time-consuming, but we find it way more effective than just asking people to do security training online, security modules online, to, with a PowerPoint or whatever they happen to be. And a good example of that is I went to one of our regional sites recently, and I said to the staff there, I gathered them all up for a security workshop training session. And I said, can anybody tell me where your duress buttons are? And people said, have we got duress buttons? So that was just an eye-opener for me. We need to do more of that. We need to get out in front of them, because in the workshop training, it talks about duress buttons, the stuff they do online. They didn't have an idea where they were, how they worked, and what happens when they press them. So definitely face-to-face to lift that culture, that security culture, is the way to go.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's always refreshing to hear how organisations practically implement those security culture uplifts. Staying with you, Scott, how can management across levels of the organisation play a more proactive role in embedding security awareness into everyday operations?
I think by recognising and promoting security as a business critical function, that's really key. And how do we do that? We've got to be seen as enablers rather than brick walls. We've got to help business operate, so we need to be flexible, we need to be responsive, we need to be approachable. they're very important, those three things, because if people don't come up and tell you what's wrong, then you can't fix it. And that's another thing that we talk about when we do our security workshops. If we go about a business like that and have an open door policy and you're so like if somebody reports a security incident, you've got to respond to it. It doesn't matter if you don't think it's a security incident, because some people will report things that are maybe, well, in my line of work, they'll report criticism to their work rather than, and think that's a security issue, which it's not. It's just a bit of criticism. So it's about understanding people's needs and being responsive, and very approachable. That's what I find works.
Yeah, good to hear. Hannah, over to you.
I think just to build on what Scott said, is it's about everybody being engaged and also leading by example. One of the things that we are always constantly working on is people wearing their IDs. So everyone has an ID with a terrible photo on it. And you're supposed to wear it at all times when you're walking around the building. And a lot of people don't. And we have a lot of people that are third parties. So we have F&B contractors, we have building contractors, and often they don't wear their IDs. And it's a very difficult issue to overcome, because some people have worked there for 50 years and they've never worn an ID. And why should they start wearing one now? So for me, in my role and with my team, it is about education. It is about the training. It is about why we're asking you to wear your ID. Because we need to know who's on site and where they're going and whether you actually should be where you are. And so it is about that constant, in messaging, we use screens a lot around the back of house areas to reinforce security messages. We have installed new screens at the stage doors to remind people to wear their IDs. We have security posted there at various times checking people's IDs. But that's got to come also from the top down. So I'm on the executive team at the Opera House. Some of my colleagues on the executive team don't wear their ID. So I sort of have that battle all the time. You've got to lead by example. You've got to set the example. You've got to, if you're asking people to do things, you've got to do it yourself. And so that's where it's so important that all of management are engaged in that messaging.
Thank you, Hannah. Shane?
Thanks, mate. Thanks, Hannah. Look, I agree with Hannah there too. Look, try to tell a Minister of the Crown that they have to wear an ID card. It's an uphill battle, but that the tone has to be set from the top, from the executive down, and then that flows down to your frontline managers who operationalise those policies and enforce those. Hopefully, on the way, getting buy-in from everyone, so it's a united front. But yeah, I can't elaborate too much more.
Now, we did have a question around where the most resistance was found, but I think broadly all three of you answered how that is addressed and from both the lower levels and the higher levels of the organisation. So I thank you very much for that. Moving on to the practical tools and frameworks that we can use, organisations such as yours can use to assess, strengthen or sustain their internal security culture. And I know that many of these frameworks do exist in the open space, and tools to measure security culture are available. Can you tell us about some of the things that you or your organisations implement? Starting with Shane?
Yeah, thanks, mate. Still harping on about that converged, holistic sort of model or framework we've adopted. That we found really, really beneficial with a recent data leak, which was actually around former ministers and their residents. So in that scenario, not only we did we liaise with our Commonwealth colleagues at Signals Directorate and other agencies, but also I had to speak to my colleagues in cybersecurity and try and understand what the hell they're saying to me. But a converged model actually in that scenario gave us a lot of, gave us the ability to act pretty quickly, and we can all look at our little areas, not so much siloed areas of responsibility, but then a combined, a converged model, and that gave us a pretty good position to move forward. And we could do different things. They could do their cyber things. We could look at residential security for those high office holders that were affected by that, and we could also look at other mitigations that could happen. But once again, that converged entity, breaking down those silos between the different functions or teams, was very, very beneficial.
Moving on to Scott.
Thank you. The tools we use, again, goes back to the training exercises that we actively deploy, including the desktop and online. And I know I said that's not as effective as face-to-face, but we also conduct security exercises within the building, within our sites. We invite the people that typically would be engaged in the response to or be affected by a security incident, and we have a number of different security scenarios that we train through. We try to, where we can, involve emergency response services, particularly the police, in those exercises. Typically, that would be an active armed offender within a building. We use a security team to identify their location through our systems, be it CCTV, access control, etc., and then practice directing the police to where that offender is within the building. These have proven to be very good training exercises to help us see where we have gaps in our security procedures and rewrite those, or gaps in the capabilities of the staff that participate in those, and also what their responses are at that emotional level, because we make it as real as we possibly can. And a written response is completely different to what happens when somebody's actually involved in something, and albeit a fake gun that's pointed at their head. It really does bring it home that that's the best way to do things for us. It's real, and that seems to work quite well.
Yeah, good to hear. Hannah, lastly?
We do similar, obviously, exercises with our teams. What we also have done is undertaken vulnerability assessments. So we've done 3 in the last 4 or 5 years. I had when I took on this role, I had 153 recommendations that we had to work through. We're down to the last 48, I'm glad to say. Some of them are things that we have to assess the cost versus the risk. But some of them have been really interesting to work through. A lot of it is around training. A lot of it has been around paperwork and making sure that we have a robust reporting system, because we have a reporting system, but it's only as good as the information you put into it. And we found that some of our report writing was a little lacking. We've just recently taken on a former member of the New South Wales Police Force, and she was horrified with some of our report writing. So we've had a quick lesson in report writing from her recently. But I think, just to echo, really, it is around that testing your teams in real environments and putting them through their paces, because desktop exercises are great and they have a place, but definitely those real life exercises. Obviously, we work a lot with counter-terrorism and New South Wales Police Force, who also exercise on our site. So it's a really good tool for our team to see how they would respond in those emergency situations.
Yeah, look, thank you very much. I know previous presenters have spoken on looking externally for collaboration, but I think we can't forget to look internally as well, to break down silos and ensure that internally there is dialogue between teams to build security cultures. I think that's very important. It certainly summarises what the 3 of you have said. Moving on to the challenges and barriers in developing a strong security culture. I know we've touched on them a little bit and where we see them, but if you had to elaborate on how you would break down and overcome challenges and barriers in building up those cultures, what would that look like? Shane, go to you first.
Thanks, Mac. Continued. I guess it's an ongoing battle to keep executive buy-in in these scenarios, and that's what's really important. If you've got that executive buy-in, you can then reinforce with teams, and you can, I guess, make a concerted effort to continue to overcome those barriers. But yeah, look, it's a no-brainer. You've got to have it from the top down. And as I said before, it's got to be operationalised by frontline managers and then reinforced. But you need people to come along on that journey too. There's a risk, I think, of, I guess, what it's called training fatigue. I don't know about you folk, but we have online training modules we have to do intermittently, and they, after all, I'm not sure any of us are really engaging with that online training. So I think it's got to be mixed up a bit. As Hannah mentioned, desktop scenarios are there too, and that's very beneficial, but you've still got to have that buy-in from the top down and keep reinforcing those positive security culture.
Thanks. Hannah?
I think it's also tricky because I look after physical security and I don't look after cyber security. So we are two separate teams. And so it's important that we have the opportunity to work together on some exercises and also collaborating, because sometimes physical security might be penetrated, which can lead to cyber. So it is very much about working together as we're two teams, but working together as one team and collaborating on solutions that actually, have to be looked at from a physical and from a cyber point of view, because it is a holistic view to security rather than just cyber security, physical security. Definitely trying to break that down and get people to understand that security is not just someone walking around doing something bad. It could be someone maliciously putting a USB on your desk or stealing your passwords. So it's that education piece again.
Yeah, brilliant. Following on a very similar theme from Shane on converged models. Scott?
Well, for us, it's making people understand that the deadlines that they have to meet in their career progressions is not as important as their personal safety, and getting home at the end of the day, literally at the end of the day, getting home to your family. If you're not there, there's always a tomorrow, I guess is what I'm saying. But there won't be one if you're not there. So the most important thing is to make sure that you remain safe and secure. Your job and your career progressions are not as important, and that's the message that we try and instill when we do our training sessions as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Moving on to collaboration. That's a key theme in building security culture and maintaining security culture. What does collaboration look like across the broader security ecosystem for your organisations, both private, public and community sectors? What does that look like and how can we improve it? Hannah, go to you first.
So where we sit, you all know where we are. Where we sit is a precinct where we obviously rely a lot on our neighbours because we are a peninsula. So any trouble coming our way, we rely on the people that are sort of up the chain from us, Macquarie Street, around to Circular Quay and the Rocks. So we rely very heavily on those relationships. We also have a lot of information sharing with those precincts because we have over 800 cameras on our site, but our cameras stop sort of just at the start of Circular Quay. Then we rely on sharing some of that footage with the Placemaking New South Wales. And then from there, we also rely very heavily on the New South Wales Police Force and the counter-terrorism teams to keep us informed of protests that might be coming our way. That happens quite regularly. Protests are not allowed on the Sydney Opera House site under our bylaws because if we allowed protests to happen, there would be a protest pretty much every day because people want to get that photo in front of the Opera House. So it's very important that we keep the site safe and clear. And so it's very much about that collaboration with the law enforcement, but we're also part of SHIELD, New South Wales Police SHIELD network. We're also part of the business advisory group for ANZ Counter-Terrorism Command. So we have strong representation in those areas to make sure that we're fully informed of the threats, fully informed of what's happening, making sure that our neighbours are also informed because they're not part of those groups. So we help them to make sure that their Royal Botanic Gardens is right there as well, making sure that they're informed as well. So that collaboration across all of our networks is vital for us because we are just one of many groups in that area that rely on that intelligence.
Yeah, fantastic. Scott, over to you.
Industry collaboration is very important. So organisations like ASIAL, ASIS International, FASE, where we can meet with our contemporaries and network and benchmark against those contemporaries and share experiences and share our what type of systems we might have in place, what works, what doesn't work. That's very important. And off the back of what Hannah said, the same thing with the police services around the country, For me, I have a very strong engagement with fixated person units. We have a lot of fixated persons at the ABC, we're the lovers or haters. So those sort of collaborations are good. And those sort of industries like Azure and events like this allows us to also engage with those people that we wouldn't normally engage with in those police forces. So, yeah, that's mine.
And last set is Shane.
Thanks for that. There's existing models that are there that probably need a little more uptake. If you look at, for example, threat intelligence sharing, there's existing models out there. There's ASIO Outreach, as Hannah mentioned, there's Police Shield. The Signals Directorate had a partnership program. These are available for public and private, and you're going to get unclassified threat intelligence on most things if you take the time to subscribe. Just interestingly, how many people have subscribed to ASIO Outreach? Hands up. It's not too bad. Look, I encourage you to do so. It's a great resource. ASD, the partnership portal, is pretty helpful too, but they make you log on. They'll cut you off pretty quick if you don't log on frequently enough. And of course, Police Shield, New South Wales Police have rolled that out quite effectively here. Look, separate to that, there's sector initiatives that are also in place. So Home Affairs have the Counting Foreign Interference Coordination Centre. They have sector-specific task force, such as the Electoral Assurance Integrity Task Force. They also have a University Research Task Force. There's Crowded Places Forums, which are in every state, which is supported by the Australian New Zealand Counter-Terrorism Committee. And of course, then that goes down to the grassroots, I think, which are more the community initiatives. So the Australian Federal Police have a foreign interference community resource area, and Home Affairs have community officers or community liaison officers to help support diaspora communities to make sure they're not being subjected to coercive control internationally. Yeah, as I said, existing model, take full advantage of it if you can.
So from the three of you, we've just got time for one more question. We've heard a lot of varied collaborations you've all talked about. If you could name one particular special or unique outcome or collaboration that you've seen it to be the most impactful or maybe most meaningful, is there any that you could name as a singular kind of example just to highlight the usefulness of those collaborations?
Yeah, Mac, look, just this year, the Sydney CBD Anzac Day events, so you had the Anzac Day dawn service in March. Prior to that particular event, there was some great collaboration between ourselves. My colleagues and I looked after hostile vehicle mitigation this year for our events people, and we sat down and desktoped with New South Wales Police specifically on that, with their major events and incident team. But separate to that, there was an all-stakeholder desktop scenario, which even involved broadcast people from Scott's organisation, and that I think was really beneficial because they'd had every character that could be there was there, and there's a lot of ownership. And we got to see how different stakeholders operate in that big picture environment.
No, that's really good to hear. Scott or Hannah, any key examples you want to note?
Yeah, you would have likely seen reported the amount of protests that have come our way in recent times, pro-Palestinian mainly, and the engagement that we've had with police on those has been fantastic across every police state. This has been awesome. If you've got a problem, pick up the phone, speak to them, engage with the police as much as you possibly can is my recommendation. Also, Shane mentioned ASIO Outreach. We had, and this is not a spectacular thing, but it's the most recent thing. So we had some staff doing some reporting overseas. A keen or a very observant viewer sent us an email to say, I think your team's being watched by state security operatives. So I went out to that team and gave them some advice, and I wasn't second-guessing myself, but I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. So I sent that off to ASIO Outreach and said, this is what's going on. This is the advice I've given. Have I given them correct advice? Is there anything I've missed? Are there any gaps? And they came back to me the next day or overnight and said, they said I did the right thing, which was great. But just the response was fantastic. So don't be scared to reach out if you've got some questions or you've got some concerns. No matter how silly you might think it is, they don't care. And if you need police, just ring them, even if it turns out to be nothing. They don't care. They're there to help.
Fantastic. Hannah, any?
Yeah, I think the all the exercises that we do on our site, it's just all learning opportunities for our people to understand what they need to do in those situations. So I think, as Scott said, it's just that collaboration and working with those police forces and counterterrorism is just, it's gold.
Fantastic. Hey, I want to thank the three of you. That was extremely insightful to have those anecdotes and examples provided back to the industry of what does work and what doesn't work and where the challenges lies. I hope it's extremely insightful, and certainly was for me. We've got a few minutes before we break for lunch. Were there any questions from the forum? No? Everyone wants to get to lunch? All right. Well, I want to thank Hannah, Scott, and Shane. Thank you very much.